Let's do this. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Maple History. Joining me today is my husband, Simon, again.
Yet again.
Today, we will wrap up the story of Cartier's voyages and the first proper attempts to colonize Canada by the French.
Wait, should we do like a tagline? Like, it's like season 3, Electric Boogaloo or something.
Hashtag Fool's Gold.
Fool's Gold. All
sorry,
right.
spoiler there. I think we all probably remember that from elementary school, like grade 6 or 7 or whenever we start this.
I remember finding Fool's Gold, and I thought it was like the best thing. I was like, I found gold as a child. Yeah.
Yep. You have that in common with Cartier. Anyway, sorry guys, spoilers. It's not really spoilers. It happened 400 or 500 years ago. Okay, we left off with Cartier absconding with 10 Stadaconans, including the chief, Donnacona, his sons Tainone and Domagayo, some little girls, and a few others, probably Donnacona's brothers. So I hope that Donnacona had a great time telling tall tales about one-legged people, bat-winged men, and the funniest, the men with no assholes, to King Francis I.
The best.
I mean,
just constantly taking the piss.
Anyways, he likely died of a European disease by 1539.
Okay.
So Cartier had planned on going back to Canada pretty quickly after his initial return to France with Donnacona and the others, but those plans were scuttled because Francis I had gone to war with Spain over control of part of Italy. Whatever, it was kingly crap over control of part of Europe.
Raid and conquer and like take assets and yeah.
Yeah, with other kings and whatever. That's what they did. They had sorted themselves out by 1538, so it was a short little war. And if you want a piece of trivia for your back pocket, it ended with the Truce of Nice on the 18th of June, 1538.
Okay.
I'm going to quiz you at the end.
Please don't.
Now that the king had more time to be influenced by Cartier, Cartier was able to secure another commission to go to Canada, this time with 5 ships.
That's a lot.
So over the next year or so, Cartier started gathering resources, finding men who would be willing to join this voyage. It was hard to get people to join because...
They died all the time?
They died all the time. And they were like the people that would go on these voyages would be fishermen or just poor people, and the risk was too high.
Yeah.
He did find some. So it seems like the promise of a miserable sea voyage, possible scurvy over a winter beyond their imaginations, did not get the best people to sign up.
Would they have heard stories by now of the craziness of Canada and the Canadian winters?
Probably, because Saint Malo, that's where Cartier was from and where he went back to.
Yeah.
All those people that were with him, they would have been around, right? These would have they would have probably just become almost folk stories. There would have been news around because they bring back Indigenous people all the time. So that word traveled. But yeah, I betcha. So they weren't getting a lot of people to join up because they needed a lot more people. They had 5 ships.
Of course.
So Cartier got permission to find some of the worst people to join. He got permission to conscript 50 prisoners.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That's who you want.
Yep. So they originally couldn't be counterfeiters or people convicted of talking smack about the king or God, known as the crime of lèse-majesté.
Okay. Smack talkers.
Throw you in jail. But eventually one of them was a counterfeiter, and they probably chose him because he'd be able to see how good the gold was or silver, right? So
yeah,
we need someone skilled in that.
Yeah.
Obviously he wasn't very skilled, but we'll get to that. So Cartier thought he was good to go, and then the king decided to give command of the mission to someone a little fancier than him, Jean-François de la Rocque, Sieur de Roberval, an aristocrat.
Oh, nice. That's, yeah.
He was also a Protestant and a friend of the king.
Okay.
So in life, Jean-François went by the name La Rocque.
Nothing ever goes bad when you give stuff away to people that are totally unqualified for things.
Yeah, well, he was a soldier and he was a sailor. So he was...
He may have been qualified. Okay. All right.
Somewhat.
Fair.
I mean, Cartier was also a sailor. You know, they were...
Yeah.
He was the king's friend. And the king basically gave him this to help him get out of bankruptcy.
Oh, nice.
All right, so he went by the name of La Rocque, but historians have decided that the far less cool-sounding name Roberval was what we're going to go with.
Oh, okay. That's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost sounded like you said The Rock.
That's like, what is La Rocque?
Yeah.
It's quite literally The Rock. Okay, so the king had appointed him lieutenant general, chief commander, captain of the said enterprise, and given Roberval authorization to distribute land to the supporters, the funders, the associates. of the expedition. And then the exchange for the profits were going to go 3 ways. So a third for the king, a third for Roberval to cover his expenses and everything, and obviously make money. And a third for the associates. So Roberval's commission had a new twist. He was to distribute land in fiefdoms while spreading the true religion, Catholicism. Oh, I did mention he's a Protestant.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Anyways, that didn't matter.
That's amazing. So he's Protestant.
Yeah.
But his whole thing is going to be spreading Catholicism. Like that's part of
on paper.
On paper. Ah, yes. Okay.
So, because it's important to keep the Pope happy, since France was going against the papal bull that gave Spain and Portugal the right to colonize the Americas.
Oh, okay.
So, as long as proselytizing was part of France's official mission,
okay,
or official plans, Francis figured that he could keep the Pope off his back.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
I mean, who knows how devout Roberval was, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he was. I don't know.
Yeah.
So Cartier gets the shaft in favor of a Protestant buddy of the king, but keeps getting his people and materials together as second in command.
Makes sense.
So he has 5 ships and about 400 people.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's men and women this time.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty rare, right?
Well, it's a full colonizing mission now.
Yeah.
The previous one was an exploratory mission.
Okay.
And this is like, we found the place, let's go. We're going to camp out here. And then he still wanted to explore west to find Asia.
Okay.
But he needed to, like, that would be a place to stop, right? Except for the whole, North America to the west.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that yet.
Okay, so already they were like, this is a settlement. That's why they have the women and
cows. I think, but they had brought sheep and stuff before for food.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't last long.
Yeah.
Okay, so he had the 400 people, including the convicts, ready to go. So he was ready, but Roberval was not. So Roberval told him to go on without him, and he would see him later in the summer. So Cartier left France on May 23rd, 1541. And he did not arrive in Stadacona until August 23rd, 1541. So what's that? That's 3 months.
3 months, yeah.
Anyways, so that must have sucked.
Yeah, that'd be a hard voyage.
3 months at sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really long considering the first time he came to Canada, he got to Newfoundland in 20 days.
Yeah.
So shit must have gone really sideways.
Well, just like storms and like the wind's going the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they finally arrived in Stadacona, and Cartier's expecting a happy reception. They get one, but that's because they were expecting their people back.
Ah, okay.
So it wasn't Cartier. They're like, where is he? They're like, move over. Where's my people? So the new chief, Agona, if you remember, he was the guy that was part of the setup that Cartier wanted to take over because he was friendlier.
Yeah. Is he now happy that Donnacona didn't come back?
No.
Oh.
No, because they were not like that.
Okay.
Some of the historians noted that Donnacona may have warned Agona off.
Oh, wow.
Because he knew what was at play.
Yeah.
They saw Tagnone and Domagaya were seeing they knew these people and they spoke the language, right? So they would have been hearing whispers, right? They would have, or they knew the language well enough, right?
Yeah.
And maybe Cartier had some guile, but the other guys that were with him probably did not.
No, they're probably,
So they were just yammering away to each other. And Domagaya and Tagnone were like, do they not know to keep your mouth shut? That's what I'm imagining, because I'm picturing this grand story, right? Well, it was. You could picture it played out with the forts and the arguing amongst each other. Don't go in there. No, we got to go in there. We have to create a relationship so that we can get these trade goods. And they're like, but don't do it. This guy's lying.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, but I have to go. And anyways.
My wife said to get me a pot.
Yeah, I needed a kettle. So they arrived. So Agona asks after Donnacona.
Okay.
And Cartier tells them he's dead. But the others are alive and well, and they're living like lords. They got married. It's great. They're so happy. But in truth, only one little girl was still alive. So Agona seems to accept this story and gives Cartier a gift of a beaded headband and acts cordially. He didn't want to get thrown in the ship's hold and taken back to France.
Yeah, fair.
Because he's seen that story before. So it becomes pretty clear, though, that Agona does not believe that all is well with his people back in France, and he trusts Cartier about as far as he can throw him. Cartier, for his part in this, thinks that Agona is on his side and is likely happy that Donnacona is dead because it leaves him the undisputed king of Canada.
He had the reaction that I did. Yeah. Cartier.
But he did not understand how politics works. there's like Stadacona was not the king, and then the others were the dukes and lords and whatever in the other subservient villages. You were the chief with family ties. And as long as those family ties and kinship ties with the other ones kind of held and you led well, you kept your spot.
Yeah. Well, I imagine based on how you're describing to me, it also sounds a lot like it was very merit-based. There's this recognition, like they were doing a really good job, or leading. You might have had some disagreements, or you wanted some amount of power, but it sounds like very different type of society.
Yeah. It's not like, the king of the pride, like a lion's pride, that he's that there's always the younger lion who's coming to take him out. That's not the case. So Cartier is generally distrustful of the indigenous people, similar to where he was before. He didn't trust them.
Yeah.
So he travels upriver to Cap Rouge, where he sets up camp and calls it Charlesbourg Royal. He makes some fortifications near the river and builds a fort on top of the cliff overlooking the area of the river where he had landed.
Okay.
This did not go over well with Agona. He would not have been pleased that his control of the river was affected by these interlopers. And he set up camp without permission. He built things with 400 people and 5 ships. Then Cartier sent 2 ships back to France with news of what progress he had made in Canada, so that they were keeping lines of communication open.
Okay.
So with the ships sent off and the Stadaconans deeply offended by Cartier setting up camp without permission, Cartier does what Cartier does best, and that is set off for Hochelaga. So on his way upriver, he stops at Adelassy, where he had cordial relations with the chief there, and the chief had given him one of the little girls.
Oh, yeah.
This time, Cartier leaves 2 boys with him with the intention that they could pick up the language as future interpreters.
Okay.
He had learned at least one lesson from the last time he was in Canada, which is that maybe kidnapping teenagers from their homeland doesn't make them loyal Frenchmen. And this is something that we'll see later with Champlain.
Does he try it as well? Kidnapping?
No, the other way.
Oh, okay. He's like smart.
Yeah, they leave the young boys with the
indigenous people.
With the Huron, with the Wendat. Okay, so Cartier carried on to Hochelaga, but the village may have moved, or perhaps Cartier doesn't go far enough in to visit Hochelaga, so he doesn't actually visit them again.
Okay.
It's not really clear. So what he does do is he goes and has a look at the Lachine Rapids with some smaller boats and decides that, again, they look too dangerous to travel through.
Fair.
So back he went to his ships and found about 400 or so indigenous people surrounding them.
Oh.
So they were just there to trade or exchange gifts. And they may not have been Hochelagans.
Okay.
They wouldn't know, right?
No. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So since he hadn't stolen any of that group's people, they were able to do the gift exchange and they were fine. Cartier just headed back to Charlesbourg Royal. He stopped again at Adelassy and found that the chief had gone. He had actually gone to meet with Agona, which did not bode well for the new settlement. So when he finally got back to Charlesbourg Royal, he found that the Stadaconans did not want anything to do with the French anymore.
Yeah.
They were not trading with them. They were not bringing fish. They were not throwing fish at them. Okay, well, no. It's not that they didn't want nothing to do with them. Sorry, I misspoke. They were killing them.
Oh.
They were picking them off.
Okay.
So they knew they couldn't take them in the fort with a full frontal attack.
Yeah.
So they were just like, oh, you're going to collect firewood. No, you're not.
Yeah. Arrows. Yeah.
So there isn't much written about the winter of 1541 to 42, but the Stadaconans did travel up to Gulf of St. Lawrence, like their traditional hunting grounds where they get porpoises and seals and whatnot. And then they met with probably their friends, some Spanish fishermen that also go down to fish cod, right?
Oh.
And they told them that they had killed 35 French. So clearly another shit Canadian winter for Cartier.
Yes.
Wasn't all bad though. He found a vein of silver and gold near his fort.
Oh, sweet.
And maybe diamonds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be fine.
the classic child finding rocks in the Ontario wilderness. There's diamonds.
Yeah. All right, so what the hell was Roberval doing during all this? He was supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
Roberval was a man who liked to live large, and in his preparations for departure, his history of poor money managing reared its ugly head. So he had wanted to bring an armory with him, but ran out of money in this preparation. So he decided to go privateering in 1541 to raise money for his journey. So he went pirating. So totally normal good guy stuff. So by the next year, he had enough to embark on his Canadian journey in 1542.
Okay. Where did he go pirating? The Caribbean?
No, not that far.
No.
Off the coast of Spain, probably.
Oh, okay.
So they just get them when they're coming back.
Yes.
Yeah. So 1542 rolled around, and Roberval was still a no-show at Charlesbourg Royal. So Cartier decided that he and his group couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't stand the attacks of attrition by the Stadaconans. So in June of 1542, he upped sticks and sailed off for Newfoundland.
Okay.
With barrels of what he thought were gold, silver, and diamonds.
Wow. Okay.
So I guess that's how they kept themselves occupied.
They just
mining.
Just mined.
Fool's gold. Like a bunch of 8-year-olds. So Cartier and his group had taken a break in what would become St. John's when they saw Roberval's fleet coming. So Cartier had been preparing to leave when he saw Roberval coming and was probably like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Roberval was not happy that Cartier had buggered off from his place in the Stadacona. So Roberval told him, get back in the boat. We're going to go a-conquering, I guess. Yeah.
Well, he had an armory, so he must have also had men, fighting men, essentially.
Yeah, and one of the ships that he had sent back to France had come back.
Okay.
The one that Cartier had sent back to France had come back.
Yeah. Okay.
So
they have the full complement of 5 ships now?
No, they had 4.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So he sent 2 and 1 came back.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, no, I got it twisted in my head here. It wasn't Cartier's ship that came back. It was Roberval's ship. I got them twisted, so disregard that earlier. But they're fine because they'd also lost some people.
Yeah.
Anyways, Cartier was like, yeah, sure, yeah, we're gonna go with you. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. We're gonna do awesome stuff. And then in the middle of the night, he just booked it back to France. Out. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So yeah, they was like,
well, he's like, I'm rich.
I'm so rich.
I'm so rich.
All right, so. As you said, Cartier thought he was going to be filthy rich and didn't want to share with Roberval. Yeah. Probably. Who knows? I mean, that's probably, he's like, I'm going to take my money and run. Basically, start the car.
Start the car.
So joke's on him, though, because all he had was fool's gold and quartz. And it gave rise to the French idiom, as false as Canadian diamonds.
Oh, okay.
So that's what he's known for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Roberval was super pissed about this, but he had his mission and off he went. So he set up camp at basically the same spot as Charlesbourg Royal, and he called it Francois. So he called it King France. Great name. And he spent August setting up their base, and in September he had sent 2 of his ships back to France to report to the king and bring back supplies. With Cartier gone and not able to tell them about the white spruce, scurvy hit hard that winter. Like, what an asshole to not tell that.
And they didn't have any friends.
They had no Damagaya to tell them because Cartier had burned that bridge.
Yeah, don't help these guys. Let them die.
So 50 people died. Things must have seemed like a horror movie with people falling apart from scurvy, colonists turning on each other. Like, one dude was hanged. Other people were whipped, including women.
Wow.
Like, things were dire. Absolute nightmare fuel. The only good thing is that the indigenous people seemed to leave them alone.
Okay.
Because they're like, oh, they were a wreck. There wasn't really any mention of attacks. I mean, maybe there were some, but they just weren't really mentioned. So by the time spring rolled around, one of the ships Roberval had sent to France was on its way back to Canada. And when it got to Francois, everyone loaded up and went home. So they loaded up on the ships, and they were all back by September 11th, 1543. Never went back.
Never went back. Okay.
Like, that was horrible. So despite the embarrassment with the quartz and fool's gold, Cartier just retired to his estate and lived the rest of his days as a country lord. He was already wealthy, and he was fairly well regarded in the community. And the evidence of this is that he was named godfather often in the baptismal records.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't have any children of his own, but he was just kind of one of the local lords, and people did seem to like him well enough.
Yeah. Okay. Even though he's a bit of a piece of work, but like, I guess to his local Frenchmen.
I mean, who knows on the scale of pieces of work?
Oh yeah, versus all the other
aristocrats.
Yeah, in France.
He might have been nice.
Yeah.
Who knows? So Roberval hung around the king and fought for him in different wars and whatever. Just carried on with basically doing the same thing he was doing before. But he was assassinated when the wars of religion kicked off in France.
Oh, because he was a Protestant?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So during Cartier's time, this mission to colonize Canada was a failure. It
totally.
was known as a failure. Loads of people died, which is normal, I suppose, for a colonial effort.
And they came back with nothing.
No.
Like nothing, like except for fool's gold and quartz.
And a funny saying.
Yes.
So the writing and printing of Cartier's Voyages, they were translated into other languages. And it's those translations that survived, not the originals.
Wait, were the first two even considered failures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he didn't really bring anything back.
Yeah. They just brought stories, which were awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess you could say like they were helpful because of the exploratory, like discovering the mouth of the St. Lawrence and descriptions of the wildlife. He did go into detail about the animals and things like that. So that is successful.
Yeah.
And that was useful
yeah,
for
useful.
Champlain.
Yeah.
But as for colonizing, it didn't work.
No.
Everybody died and they came home. So Samuel de Champlain, he knew about Cartier's Voyages and had been looking forward to seeing the creatures in just Canada. So why does Cartier loom as large as he does in our cultural awareness? People know the name. You've heard the name. So, and how does he go from a failure to a hero?
Yeah, because he wasn't like first.
Yeah, he didn't find Canada. Like he found the St. Lawrence. I mean, well, he didn't find the St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
Donnacona and Tagnone showed him the St. Lawrence.
Yes. Yeah.
He was the first to be shown the St. Lawrence.
Yes.
How about we use that? So the answer is simple. It's the rise of nationalism in the 19th century and the need for all the heroes you can scrounge up to support your nationalist cause.
Okay.
So this led to, in 1893, the people of Saint Henri, which is part of Quebec City, erected a statue with a fountain with much fanfare of Jacques Cartier with the following descriptive plaque attached. To Jacques Cartier, born at Saint Malo on 31 December 1491, sent by Francois I to the discovery of Canada on 20 April 1543. Dropping anchor 16 July of the same year by the entrance to the St. Lawrence, he took possession of the whole country in the name of the king, his master, and called it New France.
Oh.
1843. So how do we get from the dude who brought the world as false as Canadian diamonds to the father of New France? Alan Gordon explains in his book, The Hero and the Historians, Historiography and the Uses of Jacques Cartier, that it was part of how 19th century French Canadians were inventing a national identity for themselves.
Yeah.
So he talks of Cartier mania and its broad appeal to intellectuals and ordinary people. By elevating people of the past to hero status, this helped people form bonds with one another, which is so important when building a nationalist movement.
Yeah.
Gordon writes, like photographs of ourselves as children, heroic stories provide the framework of a narrative that connects or identifies previous people with ourselves. The key is that nations imagine these heroes as part of their community, as part of their families, as part of themselves. So that's why we have Cartier. So nationalism was really building and growing after Napoleon came through. His concept of France as a nation and spreading this idea.
So it was New France, as you said the plaque was in 1843?
1893.
1893. And it's the idea that New France as a country on its own, like, yeah.
So in New France in opposition to Canada.
Yes.
Because Quebec was part of Canada already.
Yes.
And then that grew and grew. And so the French nationalist movement would continue to grow. Not to say that Cartier was the fuel for this. He's just one piece of the story.
It was one of the useful tools that was like deployed.
Yeah, and that kept growing and building. And then you get the Quiet Revolution in the 60s. And that changed things in Quebec. And then you get the 80s and the big separatist movement starting, which you probably remember, the separatist movement in the late 80s and the early 90s with the referendum and Meech Lake Accord and all this keeps... Listen, I'm not saying that Cartier is the catalyst to the Meech Lake Accords.
No.
I'm not drawing a straight line here. I'm just saying he's part of the story.
Yeah.
And he was a useful tool for Quebecois people to add his story to this lexicon of heroes.
Yeah, he got added as a part of the mythology, even though he was pretty much like a failure.
Even Columbus was a failure. He was a laughingstock. The king and queen thought he was horrible.
Yeah.
And a monster. Mm-hmm. The priests who had been with him were like, you're super bad. So yeah, he died a failure, but he got reworked into a hero.
Yeah.
And of the discovery of North America. And same with John Cabot. He was useful for the English.
Yeah.
Even though he was Italian, he was Giovanni Caboto. Whatever.
Whatever.
He was working for the English, so
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for using his anglicized name.
No.
He didn't care.
No.
I don't think he gave a crap.
No.
Because he was using that to make money for himself. So yeah, Jacques Cartier is part of those stories.
Cool.
So that's what happened to Cartier and his story and how it got reworked into this hero story. But what about the Indigenous people? What happened to them? Where did they go? What about their story? Well, their story got told that they just disappeared.
Yeah.
For about 40 years, people didn't come back to the Quebec area, but they eventually did come back and they started getting furs and trading, whatever. Basically using those Spanish Basque connections, but not trying to colonize per se.
Yeah.
They're just collecting resources. And Cartier's nephew, who has a great name of Jacques Noel.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, yeah, my uncle told me that they would have called them Indians. They wouldn't have called them Indians. Cartier kept calling them sauvage.
Oh, yeah.
That's not nice.
No.
Anyway, there were no people there.
Yeah.
And where the Hochelaga, Stadacona, they're gone.
Oh.
So they disappeared. Where'd they go? They disappeared. So historians started spinning the narrative.
Yeah.
Oh, they must have died of disease. The wars. It would have been the wars. Like there's infighting. They all died. They just died.
Yeah. I would have assumed disease.
Anyhow, that's next episode.
Oh, okay.
An interesting thing about the Indigenous people that we do know about in the story, Donnacona, his name gets used. Guess what his name is used on? Well, there's a town of Donnacona, Quebec. That's fine. I have no problem with that. It's on a federal prison.
Oh.
One of the Indigenous people that were kidnapped and imprisoned
Yeah,
at Cartier.
the Donnacona prison.
There's a Donnacona prison.
That's a little
on the nose.
Yeah.
When, Indigenous people are overrepresented in the prison population.
Yeah.
I mean,
not okay.
People didn't think it through when they did that.
No.
They're like, oh, that's a great name. Use that. No. So poor Donnacona. I'm fine with the town, though. I personally, I don't know.
Makes sense.
I think it's fine to name towns after Indigenous people as much as anyone.
All right. Well, I'm excited for the next episode.
Yeah, that's with Vanessa.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll have to listen.
Yeah. And there's going to be talk of pottery bits. Not looking forward to reading more about that because it's boring.
Oh, because to know, you have to get back into archaeology.
Yeah. So we'll find out the story of truly who they were and why they're called the St. Lawrence Iroquois. But are they Iroquois? Well, we'll see. Okay, so everybody that's listening, follow on whatever you're listening to this on, and please rate and comment and share on social media. That'd be very helpful. I'm trying to get more than a dozen or two listeners.
It can be hard to figure out how to comment, but please keep at it. Figure it out.
Even if you can't comment, if you're like, I can't be arsed to comment on that thing, don't stress about it. But if you can just share it, or just tell one person, like in the old-fashioned way with talking to people, that's also fine. Yeah. All of this is anything that you can do. I would appreciate it.